The general consensus from the gaming community, movie-going crowd, and studio executives is that video game movies are a hopeless cause. A large part of the gaming community says that video games shouldn't be made into movies because they can't be done right, and there's no point in doing them anyways. The movie-going crowd simply thinks that video game movies inherently suck because, let's be honest, they've never been good. Then, the biggest concern with studio executives, of course, is that there's supposedly too much financial risk involved in producing these movies. Based on movies that have already come out, gamers are right. Video games have not translated very well into film. One may argue that this is because games and movies utilize different tools to engage their audiences and to create a good work of art. In a video game, the audience interacts with everything, and in a movie, the audience interacts with nothing. Games and movies have to be designed and displayed in totally different ways. A short argument would be that what makes a game good is not what makes a movie good. The experience and how it affects the audience is different. So basically, one might ask, why bother trying to adapt a game into a movie? Well, just because games function differently from movies doesn't mean they don't have any elements that would translate well into film. For example, plot, lore, characters, world design, music, concepts, and appealing visuals. All of these translate really well onto film. As a matter of fact, a lot of these elements already have been translated really well onto film. The problem, though, has been that adaptations lack in other areas such as dialogue and story, which I'll get into more later. Exploring all of these elements while sitting in a theater or your TV room without constantly being met with challenges, problems, and the stress of failure is a pretty darn good reason to want a video game movie. Depending on the game, good ideas and elements are already there as a strong base to make a good movie. So, why not make a video game movie? Don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to say movies are better than games. I'm also not saying that the frustrations and challenges in games are not fun, because they are fun. It's just that certain elements can be more elaborately explored with more enjoyment and be given a nearly real-life vision in a movie. So, more than anything, it's reasonable to say that the differences between games and movies are a reason to make a video game movie rather than a reason not to. Even if you can agree that there are good reasons to make a video game movie, you still run into the movie crowd's point. As I said before, all video game movies have been terrible. There's not a single theatrical film adapted from a video game that's been good. While we can say this, is that really because video game movies are inherently bad? I would definitely have to say no. Here's why. Every video game movie, including the ones that are based on fairly cinematic games, have been assigned by studios to bad directors and bad writers. You can look up the cast of the movies yourself. Not a single video game movie has a reputable director or writer. Even the directors and writers who actually have worked on somewhat major productions have only made bad movies. This is really the reason why the dialogue is so bad and the story is ruined or non-existent in these movies. Video game movies are not inherently bad, it's just that film studios have only tried to make them with horrible filmmakers. On a slightly off-topic note, I want to mention the director Lee Boll. He has made several video game movies that were awful, and he's just a horrible director and horrible person in general. He's responsible for many abominations in the film industry, and he's funded by the German government. Lee Boll's movies are even worse than the worst non-government funded movies. So I just want to say the government getting involved in the film industry isn't helping anything. Okay, now back to the main subject. What I'm saying is that if a movie is created by reputable filmmakers, it will be good while still capturing what made the game special. I mention what makes the game special because if the movie doesn't have that, then who cares how good it is? More reputable filmmakers are more willing to delve into a game and really understand what things made it amazing and not just what made it good. Finally, you have the financial aspect of these movies. Some producers claim that it's too risky with the movie's proposed budgets being as high as $150 and $200 million, which is perfectly understandable because that's a lot of money. Except for the reason that these movies are more likely to profit than not, especially considering that a lot of popular games are pretty easily advertised to a wide audience, and a lot of the games carry all of the characteristics of successful movies. That, and a few successful franchises already exist. Two current ones, which I'm sure you already know about, are Silent Hill and Resident Evil. Now, Silent Hill as a movie franchise has not done nearly as well as Resident Evil. Why is that? Well, it's because Silent Hill is kind of weird, and it can't use action scenes as an excuse for being bad. Weird movies need to be good to be successful. Not that Silent Hill was a flop, it just should have performed better. The budget of the sequel was $30 million less than the first, in anticipation that it wouldn't perform as well. And guess what? It made a lot less. It makes me wonder if the producers in the studio ever considered how the low quality of the first movie affected the marketability of the franchise. Not only did they cut the budget by $30 million, they waited 6 years to make the movie. Imagine if the studio and the producers put in the extra effort or even a little extra money in making sure the first movie had better writers. They would have made more Silent Hill movies and they'd have a significantly larger profit for each one. Think about it. Any fans who would largely contribute to the movie franchise's success were alienated by the horribleness of the first movie. Anyone who didn't know Silent Hill was alienated by the horribleness and by its general weirdness. Any chance of a new fan base getting into it, despite being different and unusual, was ruined. Aside from the performance of one franchise, there are the big flops. Why do these flop? Aren't they based on super popular games? How did Super Mario Bros. Not become a success? Everyone knows Mario, right? Here's the thing, I'm kind of going to go against something I said earlier. Some games will inherently make for bad movies. Some games just don't have story, plot, or character development, and then people try to turn them into movies with story, plot, and character development. Just because everyone knows the game doesn't mean people would want to see the movie. For example, everyone likes Battleship, but can you honestly say you were excited when you found out a Battleship movie was coming out? Of course not. 99% of the movie had nothing to do with the game. Just like the Mario movie, Prince of Persia, Tekken, and Doom. Notice how film studios are making movies based on games with no story more often than they make ones with story? Also notice how those are the ones that flop the most? So yeah, video game movies are risky if you have no clue what would make a good movie. It's also kind of risky to get horrible writers to save money. So I'd like to finish off by saying, step 1, pick games that would actually work as movies. Step 2, get better writers. Step 3, make a good movie. Step 4, Step 5, profit. Studios are happy, moviegoers are happy, and gamers are happy.